本日はジェネラルカンファレンスアドバンストテックトラックにご来場いただき誠にありがとうございます。ただいまよりクラウド時代のシステムの信頼性と品質管理、クラウド環境における品質要求を満たすための AWS のグローバルな取り組みと題しましたパネルディスカッションを始めさせていただきます。はじめにパネリストの皆様をご紹介いたします。
So I'd like to introduce the panelists, so please give them a big round of applause. I'd like to introduce from Kyowa Kirin, Director Information System Department, Mr. Toshiyuki Shinoda. From Filler Systems Corporation, Consultant, Mr. Yoshio Takeuchi. From Amazon Web Service, Mr. Chad Wolf. Also from Amazon Web Service, Mr. Mark Johnston. The moderator for today from Amazon Web Service Japan, Security Assurance Headquarters, Mr. Akihiro Umegai is going to be the moderator for this session. So now, I would like to pass the microphone over to Mr. Umegai. Well, hello, thank you very much, and thank you very much for joining despite your very busy schedule. And at the entrance, I believe we had a copy of this brochure, and accordingly, we may have you refer back to this brochure, and I hope you enjoy the session. This is the quality requirement that is requested from the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, MHLW, and how Amazon Web Service are catering to these requirements, and also some of the comments from the partner as well. So we have business development and also customers and the GXP expert, and also we have security members with us. We have multidisciplinary members in talking about the quality assurance of cloud, which really is a challenging theme for us, but we hope that we'll be able to proceed this session successfully. So now, first of all, in terms of the life science, in terms of pharmaceutical and also medical devices, how a business law being led in this discipline, we really did not have the opportunity to share this with you. So inclusive of the compliance requirement, I would like to make sure that this is going to be well communicated to a customer. And first of all, from AWS, life science business development on a global basis is being led by Mr. Mark Johnston. And he had decided to participate in the session at last minute. So Mark, I would like to have you utilizing the foil, how AWS is pursuing on this effort and discipline. Mark will be introducing to us. So please.
View of AWS healthcare business and life science, please.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for everyone to join us this afternoon. So I just wanted to start with our business on a global scale. So we actually operate with global companies. Many of the life sciences customers that we work with actually distribute their products, whether they be drugs or medical devices, across different countries around the globe. The Japanese market is of particular interest to us, given the fact that there's many large customers in both the pharmaceutical side as well as the medical device community based here in Japan. So I think one of the things that has been very attractive to customers in this segment that are working with us is the fact that we have a global network of data centers and regions across the world. So the ability to work with AWS at that scale is very helpful to them. I think that the other thing that's really important is that over the many years, most people don't understand how much we're doing in the life sciences area. So this slide that's above me actually demonstrates the breadth of our ecosystem that crosses both the genomic sector as well as the biopharmaceutical sector and the medical device sector, which we describe broadly as our life sciences business. It's made up of both customers as well as independent software vendors. And I think it's interesting as you think about each of your journey into using the AWS cloud to support validated systems is the fact that you might be building or re-platforming systems that are traditionally provided on-premise today. But the software community is working very actively, and I would say very quickly, to bring solutions to market, whether they be in clinical trials, through contract management and quality management systems, things like serialization systems to track the flow through the entire value stream. You're going to see more and more of those solutions in market, and it's at an accelerating pace. To give you some perspective on that, we're working with a variety of organizations worldwide, but I wanted to highlight a couple of them to you. The first is the Food and Drug Administration in the United States. So they started their journey with us really to help around the area of pharmacovigilance and adverse drug reporting. So they embraced the AWS cloud and translated what had been a very non-scalable and frankly not very well architected system into a new system that was based on AWS, and it's been very successful in helping not only, if you can see the detail that's on this slide, but we really reduced not only the time to produce adverse drug reports, but as well as the cost. And so when you think about a major regulator embracing the AWS cloud, I think it's very important to understand that it's a leading indicator of where the industry is going. We've recently also launched the Precision FDA platform, which is focused really on the genomics industry. But the FDA in the United States is trying to create a global portal where researchers can come in and characterize their genomic variants. So we did that with one of our key partners in the life sciences area, which is DNA Nexus. I think the fact that a regulator like the FDA is embracing the AWS cloud is very important. Just to give you another perspective, many of you probably know of Merck. It's a US-based biopharmaceutical company. But manufacturing is an area that traditionally has been one of the most sensitive areas for compliance. And in this case, we created what the folks at Merck call a data lake. And they had traditionally done their manufacturing analysis with a very manual approach. So we created a data lake that focused on building 16 different feeds from their manufacturing systems into a common big data analytics framework. And the reason that they actually decided to build this system on AWS was that they were having difficulties with tracking this is in their vaccine production, tracking their yields, and they found that there was a declining yield in what they were producing through vaccine production. Once they built the data lake on AWS, they identified that the fermentation process was the culprit or the challenge within their manufacturing supply chain. And so this is a great example of how our customers are embracing big data analytics at scale across their global manufacturing framework. And I think you're going to see more and more of this as the industry continues to mature and take advantage of the AWS cloud. Lastly, I would just touch on that it's not just happening in the United States. We see it across the globe. As I mentioned earlier, Japan is a key market for us, and you're going to hear later from one of our panelists about what's happening here in Japan, and we're very excited that we have the opportunity to support the industry and to help the industry move ahead. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So 今マークからオーバービューということで AWS が
So the overview of the AWS supporting the life science industry. And of course, from Mark, as mentioned earlier, US, and not only in the West, but the Japanese market, AWS continues to focus on. So as a part of it, so far, the public use cases Shinoda-san is here from Kyowa Hakko Kirin. We would like to introduce to you. So the PowerPoint of the, sorry, it's for the panels. Sorry, okay, we're up to updated. So from Shinoda-san of Kyowa Hakko, I would like him to present. But before that, I have a question to Mark.
How U.S. customers think about FDA things? That's the most popular question from Japanese customer. I mean, how U.S. customer aware of FDA things and how our FDA case study make a good impact to U.S. pharmaceutical customer. That's the most popular question from Japanese customer.
I appreciate it. I think that it's not just U.S. customers, all customers across the globe that operate in life sciences are very sensitive to the compliance subject. Given how many people in the room are here, I think that's a good indication of that. But back to the question, it's important to understand that we are not at AWS an FDA-regulated entity. So what we try to do is we provide guidance about how customers can use our services to increase auditability, traceability, and control frameworks around how they deploy validated systems. Each one of our customers has a unique relationship with the FDA based upon the products that they produce. And what we do is that we work with our customers one-on-one. And in fact, building our whole program, we had a very collaborative relationship with many large customers in the United States that are FDA regulated. And they helped support the resources that we developed. So we think about it as how we help the industry address the regulatory concerns with a very keen ear to their needs, and providing the capabilities and the resources so that they can actually work with the FDA one-on-one.
Thank you very much. おそらく今お話お聞きになったように、日本の
Right, like he said, I think it's the same thing with the Japanese customers. How, the life science companies talk to the regulatory agencies in Japan. Well, Chad is going to elaborate a little bit later about the Japanese market. But now I would like to hear from Shinoda-san as to how they use AWS in this industry. Yes, from Kyowa Hakko Kirin, my name is Shinoda. So today, I would like to introduce our use cases. So it's still early for us to introduce ourselves. However, what we've done so far, I would like to share with you. So Kyowa Hakko Kirin, just a brief overview. We manufacture and market the pharmaceutical product. And due to the time constraints, I would like to skip through the profiles of the company. I need to finish everything in 7 minutes. Sorry for the time constraints. Okay, thank you. So cloud, the expectations for AWS. This improvement of the business speed, that was the original objective to adopt AWS. For one, we'll be able to just build server easily and try it to the risk on a test and trial basis. We can iterate that very quickly. So that was a good thing for us to increase the speed of the operations. And the SAP certified in the production, and it's available for the use by the financial industry. And so it gave us the confidence. However, when it comes to cloud, of course, we would like to expect the cost efficiency. However, we had questioned whether that would be really cheap. So we would like to maintain at least the cost. So our biggest objective still was the improvement of the business speed, the agility. Now, our environment with AWS, as mentioned briefly earlier, the highlight here is that the production environment, we have multiple environment, and we'll be able to leverage that. And on the right end, we're using the region in the western U.S. The eastern U.S., sorry. So This is how we operate. And internal data center, it is connected. So that's our structure. And test environment is not included here, but we have that. So we had created, and we can decommission the test environment at ease. And the migration to AWS for the system, we are still in the process, but the loosely coupled architecture we adopt. So the mission critical system is not the single one. The multiple packages are combined to build our mission critical system. So as you see, the yellow boxes over here in the diagram, 2013, 14, and 15, basically all of them have been refreshed to AWS. So Enterprise Hub, we originally said that, it would not go to AWS, but before we know it, we gained confidence and we had migrated to AWS, all of these. Now, our history of adopting AWS. So around spring of 2011, Tokyo region was open. So that was the first encounter with AWS, and VPC service and the VPN became available. And we thought that, maybe we can use it at our enterprise, and we had started to try and test. And actually, having said that, we're not certified. Just a free virtual server, can we use it? We had made some research. And come fall of 2012, SAP, the ERP, was certified for production environment. So we waited for that. And we need to address CSV, some of the systems we had, and we had started to explain that, and as a result of the researches. But again, having said that, little by little, we had migrated to AWS, the production operational environment. And beginning of 2013, the private cloud data center, we started to operate as a private cloud. It's public cloud, AWS. However, we started to use it as a private cloud in the beginning of 2013. Now, and about a year later, SAP production. So actually, we had started to do so as planned 6 months earlier. However, we had some questions and concerns about the securities, and we had some internal negotiations, and we needed to convince them, to give them the confidence. And we had offered, the research results. So it had taken some time, I had to admit, but in the end, our plan was approved 6 months earlier. And including the upgrade, we had taken 6 months, a little over 6 months, to move to the production. And all that little over 6 months we had spent in convincing our internal people and the management. And internal audit, so to speak, we had to go through. So, we had, for the CSV address, we had taken about a year to be ready. So the challenges and the concern that many of the audience may have. Actually, I had supported you, but 3 years ago now, right? So the AWS at that time, we had talked with the QC and the QA people. We had much discussion about how to ensure quality. And I have the impression that it had taken a lot of time. Yes, how to get rid of this anxiety, that was the biggest challenge. And later I'm going to elaborate. Going into our challenges. So for one of our challenges that to convince the business and the management, because they have concerns, I understand. And when I make the report on the IT risk, I would say, cloud is available. The financial institutions are using it. In those things, I had reported to the management, and the cloud is readily available. And we didn't have any, extra budget for that. It's just an explanation I had to do. And FISC, and other certification the cloud had received. And everyone was convinced that, it's time. And, it gave confidence to the management. And the second, in the cloud environment, how to address CSV, the risk evaluation. We had to seek the cooperation of the QA. Maybe it was the first project for Umegai-san, and he had helped me a lot. And we had overcome each and every challenges. And one of the questions is where the data center will be. The physical audit cannot be done, so that's a concern. However, regular audit is done and it's certified for different certifications. So the quality assurance system itself is confirmed. So they were finally convinced. However, it had taken time. So we had struggled there quite a bit. But in fact, the procedures we had gone through in adoption of AWS, it's the same procedure for on-premise, the configuration and so forth. The process has been more or less the same. And the service level for the end users, originally we had our own data center and we were used to it, and no problem with the responses. And hardware failures, sometimes it happens. And AWS does cause those failures sometimes. However, to reboot it to the new servers. So the troubleshooting with those hardware failures, and we validate that. And that should be okay. So it's just considered a minor troubles and failures. And the situation as we had started to use AWS, sorry, it's a busy slide with the small letters, but you see the last point with Sun, $80,000 a month. And at the bottom, there is a little spike and a graph. So that's a workspaces and those new solutions and Redshift. We has recently started to use those managed services. And we have been trying and had been actively using it, so the cost is increasing. And 2 or 3 years ago, where we, refreshed the system and started to use those new services. So that's the most recent systems. In the production environment, 39 systems and 84 servers. So the setting of the 203 servers. Okay. So it's a real data that only Kyowa Hakko Kirin would share with us publicly like this.
Of AWS, so you see a graph, then AWS fee jump up after we clarify the CSV requirement and audit things. And now Shinoda-san, Kyowa Hakko Kirin is a big user for AWS. So usually Japanese customers don't show these kind of values to public, but Shinoda-san disclosed this data. It's great things. ありがとうございます。
So AWS is making so much money. That's the slide. Right. On the slide, I'm a bit embarrassed, but anyway. But, the price reduction was done many times. And I think that this sudden spike or the surge will be slowing down. Now, talking about cost, some of the cost challenges and the highlights. And there are a few bullet points. But the first thing is that SAP, when we had migrated to AWS, the key, in one word, is that the basis service became cheaper. the money that we had paid for the servers as a service, it was like a rental service. So the basic service we were able to reduce the cost for a lot. And, we try to do the downsizing, the sizing, the optimal sizing. The optimal services we select, and a lot of times we can reduce the cost. And as necessary, we can extend. But it will be the optimal sizing. It's easy to do. And AWS price suddenly and frequently will be reduced, and that's a happy news. However, the reserved instances, it's as cheap as the 40% reduction. It's a surprise, nice surprise. And the license schemes, is changed often, like middleware's tools. When it goes to cloud, the price goes up in terms of licenses. So you need to be careful. And then recently we have an increased risk of the exchange rates. But, you can't help that. Like I had shown you, the operational expenses has substantially been reduced. But actually, more than that, the scope of our operation had expanded. So the cost continues to increase because of that, because we use more of your services. So let me ask you, Mark.
Shinoda-san talks about cost efficiency of cloud services. So how U.S. customers think about this cost reduction or system efficiency when they deploy newly cloud systems? So is there any general impression from U.S. customer? Like they think cloud is very efficient in terms of cost reduction, or like that?
I think that cost has to be, you have to consider cost in a holistic way. If you think about the cost of not being agile in your business, I think there's a big cost to that. I would say that we continually, however, work with our customers to cost optimize. And when you look at the long-term value proposition of moving to the cloud, it is how do you retool your infrastructure and your business so that you can be more competitive? There's a variety of different things that we do, like Trusted Advisor, where we render recommendations to customers on how they can cost optimize.
Yep.
And I think that part of it is how you also look at how you can get more productivity out of your IT staff, where they're not spending time on infrastructure, they're spending time creating value in your business. And I think that when you think about it holistically around business agility, creating more value through your resources, your human resources, and then, just the dependability of the cloud, I think it creates a very good cost equation if you think about it more broadly. And we don't really hear complaints from our customers that the cloud is costing them too much. We hear a lot of support for the business benefit they're getting out of using AWS in terms of agility, competitiveness, and reliability.
Okay, thank you very much. すみません、インタラプトして。じゃあ次の進んでいただきます。
Okay. So the cost optimization, we'll be able to upgrade when we want to. And the speed, the agility, that's the best benefit and the value. Having said that, in summary, AWS, the work we do has been the same. As we have migrated to AWS, so the system operational rules, it remains the same. And whatever we need to ensure the quality, it's the same as on-premise. And we will use AWS the same way to address CSV. It has taken time to convince the management. However, once we started to operate AWS, it's the same thing. And for AWS also, even if it's a virtual server, sometimes we need to address the failures. And we had experienced them. And at that time, the recovery is quicker. So hardware fails and the next server will, come up very quickly. But of course, we need to back up the servers. So we need to be cautious, as we've been doing. Well, region backup there is. However, when something, some big failure happens at AWS, we need to protect our own data. We are responsible for that. And the AWS cost management, of course, is optimal. But if we leave it as is, there will be some waste. And there are different tools available. So we'll try to optimize that using those tools. And that's why that graph I had shown you, the cost is reducing, and test environment, it goes up and down. But we're trying to optimize it. And recently, the CSV white papers, there are some references, is now ready, finally. And we conventionally have never been the beneficiary of that. But in the future, those of you who would adopt AWS going forward in this industry would benefit a lot. And the consulting and the support by the AWS evangelist and the AWS eJAWS, the users meeting, and the AWS partners. In the past, there is a big partner ecosystem, and they have a strong power. And the trusted partners, we can choose and work with them closely. Then, your optimization will be even easier and better. And that concludes my presentation. So, we have even the greater expectations going forward. Okay, well, thank you very much for speaking on behalf of us. But the cost reduction, the cost that tends to be emphasized more in the world of cloud. Cloud meaning cheaper. But rather than the cost reduction, cost optimization is the key word here. So whatever the user needs to use, you can use it only that much. And if you don't use it, you don't have to use it. That control is at the customers. And proactively, they can effectively optimize the use of AWS. Now, Shinoda-san had shown you the very realistic graph. The cost goes up and down. And the new systems and the services, you start to use. And of course, you pay more to AWS. However, you only use what you need and you can control it. And that's visual and transparent. And CSB white paper. Well, Shinoda-san had already mentioned, but as I had mentioned, this material that you have in front of you, that's a result of the effort by the AWS partners. Before, we didn't have any of these. And later, Chad is going to introduce the introduction of the AWS for GXP. And 3 years ago, when Shinoda-san started to embark on this journey, we didn't have it. So I and Shinoda-san and Shinoda-san's team in QA, we just had a lot of discussions. But the results are reflected in this brochure. So those of you who consider to adopt AWS and migrate to AWS, you see the essence of what you would need. And so we repeatedly say CSV, and we have in the audience many of the pharmaceutical companies and manufacturing companies, who are those industries who are sensitive to quality. Now, the quality itself, the definition is sometimes difficult. And before we started to talk to the pharmaceutical industry, it was a dilemma. What's the quality in cloud? That was the question. Now, one of the toughest requirement, the GXP specialist Takeuchi-san is here. So what is the quality? And what is the quality and quality insurance, assurance and ensuring in the life science industry? He is going to talk now. Takeuchi-san's slide, please.
So can we also change the monitor as well?
竹内でございます。
Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Takeuchi. we need to also have the monitor in front of the panelists. Have it changed? Well, in terms of the quality assurance of the computer system, in pharmaceutical and drugs, quality assurance is a very important aspect of our job. So quality assurance sort of stands of its own, but we have to think about the computerized system of how we would be able to offer the quality assurance of computer system. And we need to ask ourselves what needs to be done in this area. So all the people in the back office, sometimes it does invite a lot of confusions. But it's a generic sort of concept of the computer system quality assurance, which I'd like to highlight some of the important areas. So securing this reliability of the computer system leads to the quality assurances. So the trustability, the trustworthiness. It's a replacing of the words with quality assurance, but this, I think, really summarizes what we are trying to aim at. The methodology is that the computer system will able to manipulate as it has intended, and this needs to be guaranteed. So that, I think, is another word of putting it together in words. So as intended, to move or manipulate as intended, to operate as intended, is when we start the computer system, it needs to operate to do its work, and the computerized system, while utilizing computerized system, whenever it is, what's intended needs to be realized, and that, I think, is an absolute necessity. So in terms of adapting to the intended requirement and adapting and complying with the regulation are the basic needs. In terms of system development and operation of the system, we will need to make sure that is well verified and well managed in order to achieve full quality assurance. So this is a computer system validation. A methodology or procedure, I don't know how you call it, but this is how this is required for you to comply on. Well, Mr. Takeuchi, I also was a bit confused to the fact that computer system and computerized system. What is the system of computer system and computerized system? I think many of the audiences who are not in the pharmaceutical field may be puzzled. But computerized system is utilizing computer system, overall business or work related to utilize computer system. It's a way of work. So that's the computerized system. So that's, I think, is what this computerized system means. So it includes the processes. Yes, the computer itself, inclusive of application. On top of that, how this is going to be leveraged and utilized. So overall process is a computerized system. Is that the correct understanding? Yes, I would say yes. Yes to that. And this computerized system, regarding computerized system, in terms of drug, which have a significant impact, influence on human bodies. It's a very, therefore, a strict and appropriate management needs to be implemented in this field. So in the country base, there are regulatory strict requirements that requires for a rigid management of this, and that's something that we would need to understand. And this regulations is in Japan is a regulation relative to drugs and medical device. This is the abbreviation of that. The full name of that, drugs and also medical equipment, quality, efficacy and security needs to be secured, and it's a regulation stipulating that. So in a short sort of abbreviation, we call it pharmaceutical law in the past, but now it's drug medical device law. So this is a new naming that has been appointed. Under this law, each of the product, drugs and medical devices, and there are development and also manufacturing for the commercial base, and also distribution, and also market launch. Appropriate management needs to be placed, and some of the requirements that needs to be complied, or some of the management that needs to be met. We need to overcome the standard that has been stipulated in this law. So this is a sort of a rule, maybe in form of a recommended rule that we all need to meet. So that is just the so-called GXP. It's called GLP in the development, or GCP in clinical trial and manufacturing. It's GQP, QMP, and QMS for medical devices. So regenerative medicine, GCTP. So these are the acronyms that are being utilized. And after the launch, GVP, or GPSP. the product efficacy and security needs to be guaranteed. And making sure that there is a verification test in order to guarantee those areas. So in terms of drug and medical device industry vertical people, you are very, very versed with this requirement. But to these cases, we have a guideline to follow that, and also case studies that are being reflected on this. A computerized system, overall law and regulation requirement, if you're going to utilize computer, there are several set of rules that we will need to follow. Or maybe, again, it's recommended as a procedure to follow. The guideline for the procedures, the way of thinking. So that is being compiled as part of the guideline that is notified by the government. So computerized system optimization management guideline is seeking and securing the reliability of the computerized system. So it's a guideline in order to make sure that it's reliable. And looking at it, it's GQP, GMP, manufacturing or quality related. It's just still yet limited in terms of whether notification has been publicized, but it should be applied to the wider spectrum for drug and medical device industry. So this, I think, is a better way of interpreting this guideline. And the other is the electromagnetic log and also e-signature, the guidance of utilizing e-signature and electromagnetic log. So this is data that's been compiled by utilizing computer. So in terms of the law of drugs and medical device, in the appropriate way of management, it really is the evidence. And you need to electronify that by means of e-signature or e-log. And it's utilized for that very purpose. But this is on par with the documentation. The e-log and e-signatures are being secured. It's a requirement to make sure that these requirements, quality requirements, are being met. So CSV is the prerequisite of that, and also e-log, the trustworthiness and the completeness, and it's the same as paper. It's read them. It's readable when you go back in these logs, and the storage requirement needs to be secured on these e-logs and e-record as well, and also trustability of e-signature. Already, the pharmaceutical society, members of the society has already overcome these requirements. And the CSV framework. Well, this is a computerized system. So it's a planning and development of computerized system. And until the end of the life cycle to be discarded, to be renewed, continuously appropriate management needs to be conducted in every way, every steps. And that needs to be also guaranteed. Well, as Mr. Shinoda already shared with us, in terms of the ambiguity and anxiety towards cloud, if you are considering of utilizing cloud, these are some of the issues that keeps you awake at night. So at utilization of cloud, the operational management. So what are some of the things that needs to be taken in mind and aware of? I have several bullets. In other words, security management. In financial services, the fact that it's a financial institution also utilize cloud, the data security issue, and operational facility management strictly being conducted. But we need to guarantee that. And also appropriate operational maintenance following the procedures also needs to be met, meaning system support and system maintenance works, and system change management, and also documented management standard or procedures. And the fact that you have a record that you have met all these goals also needs to be recorded. And all the people who are going to do this job, the educational training on the talent needs to be done by the plan, or making sure that it abides by complies with the requirements is something that we also need to be aware of, especially cloud. In terms of the operator is Amazon. We are going to depend on Amazon for its overall operation. How are you going to conduct audit is another important area that needs to be looked into in the future. So the right understanding, the right sort of way to persuade the utilization of cloud, it's very difficult to correspond with the concern that the government may have, and also at the audit that is going to be conducted, whether this is going to be explicitly being explained, I think is going to be the main important area that needs to be aware of. Well, there are a lot of areas that are deeply embedded in the expertise of these fields. But from the last slide, I think what the customers are considering, or maybe the question that may rise, is that, for instance, the Japan GXP or quality assurance, the expert in these fields, the fact that the cloud is going to be utilized, or cloud is going to be utilized within the framework of regulation, what are their thoughts? Well, from Takeuchi-san, and from Chad, later on, you will be presenting within your presentation. But I'd like to also have Chad to consider or share with us the U.S. situation regarding this matter. So first of all, I'd like to ask Mr. Takeuchi about Japan. What are the GXP experts thinking and what is their attitude towards the situation? Well, the professionals on GXP, what concerns us is that cloud in the future era, it's going to be fully embraced, and there is a lot of benefits in fully embracing cloud technology. But as I've said and stipulated here, in terms of operational management, in terms of consignment of the operational management side of the business, how this is going to be appropriate is going to be done, is going to be audited and supervised, and that is going to be undertaken as your own company's document and your own company's report. And how far you can do so is really the area that I have a concern on. So the governments and the regulatory bodies, will they say yes or go sign to that? Have you go signs to that is another question. And the recent, of course, area of the interest is that the regulatory bodies, the fact that these are all being met and there's no concern, and this could be shared as a common set of understanding. How are you going to establish that environment? And that, I think, is a big challenge or issue. Well, the expert, maybe regarding cloud information, they have not been exposed to the full cloud information. Do you think they're still concerned about the utilization of cloud? Well, I think Shinoda-san had a hard time in implementing this. A long duration of discussion is needed, and a thorough discussion is needed. And the empirical data does not reside with us today here in Japan. So in the United States, we are seeing a wide adoption of this in this area. It's something that we can learn from as a good reference. And Japan, the regulatory bodies and enterprise and the FDA's approach, FDA's ways of thinking, how they have approached this issue and embraced and harnessed the cloud technology. It's a good learning process for us. So we're very much looking forward in learning from the U.S. case. Okay, thank you very much.
Let's move to your presentation, and please make some introduction about AWS GXP resource, as well as how U.S. those auditors or regulators or any GXP specialists think about cloud adoption. This kind of information, please provide.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This has been really interesting to me to hear these perspectives as well, because from our perspective, my perspective of providing the right certifications and enablers for our customers to be able to use the cloud for GXP type workloads, it's sometimes a challenge for me to. It's a kind of frustrating sometimes to see how slow the adoption is, and I completely understand why the adoption is slow, because there is a world of experience and practices and practices that are very mature and have been developed over a long period of time to validate systems. So these practices that began back when mainframes started to become popular and more common in drug development companies or device manufacturers, that's when system validations, computer validations began to be more prevalent. And so we've been, this industry, the regulators or the auditors have been developing a methodology for making sure that the systems act as intended for decades. And so now we're introducing something that is quite horrifying for some of these practitioners, and that is an environment where you can quickly spin up servers and put databases together and make them interconnected instantly. And so the regular gates that are in place to ensure that that's done properly might not be in place in a cloud environment. And this is the basis of why many auditors or many practitioners in this field are nervous about it. So what we've done a few things on our side, the Amazon side, to help with this. Number one is the certifications around quality. It's for the first time that any cloud provider has created a certification or been certified under ISO 9001, and to really interpret or translate the quality requirements that the GXP environment, the industry needs, into a cloud perspective. And so our certification under ISO 9001, along with our other certifications, but this one in particular, talks about quality. We have a quality manual. We interpret the quality requirements that the industry has established over the decades into what it means to be in the cloud. So that's the first thing that we've done. And then the second thing is we've given the customers a lot of capability to do traditional validation processes in the cloud. Now, a while ago in the hardware era, and the paper era, we did a lot of paperwork. We had a lot of sign-offs of actual papers. There's a lot of manual processes, physical signatures on pages, and a lot of people, like an army of people, to make sure the systems are validated. Then we moved towards the virtualization area early last decade, where virtualized servers began more prevalent, which automated part of the process. So then we were able to have procedure-driven manuals, process flows, where part of the processes were automated and part of them were still manual. And I think a lot of our customers, when they first start this process, that's the phase they're in. They have a lot of procedural manuals, there's a lot of process flow diagrams, and a lot of things that they've worked out over the last decade to make sure that they can validate the systems. Now, in the cloud era, this is very code-driven. Most of what we do to procure servers is now automated. And so code is very, very predictable. People having manual process, introduce flaws, and code with predictable inputs and outputs makes procuring servers much more transparent, predictable, and allows somebody who can transition from today's traditional way of doing it to using the cloud and using code. It gives them a much, much higher level of assurance over the process because it's automated. I mean, those of you who are auditors in this room know that automated controls, automated processes, and automated quality checks are much better than manual ones that rely on a person or somebody's expertise to exercise judgment. There still is a need for that, of course, but for the things like procuring a server, something that doesn't take judgment, and it can be done using actual code. So that's kind of where we're progressing here. Infrastructure as code, as I said here. Here's an example of code that you would be able to see. An instance type is an AWS EC2 instance, and the properties of those instances, a specific availability zone and a specific image. And you'd be able to not only see or create this in a way that's very predictable, but also go back and see exactly what has been done and who has created it and who has permission to it. So again, part of what we've provided for our customers is the ability to design a procurement process, something that is driven by code, is repeatable completely over and over, and then is done in a way that follows your exact design specification. So we have something called Quick Start resources, using things like CloudFormation templates, using Service Catalog, using tools that we provide like AWS Config and Config Rules. If you're not familiar with these specific tools, these are tools that help create an environment that is secure by default, so secure by design, and there is no possible way to deploy an environment that falls outside of the design that you've specified. So nobody in the company can create an environment that is out of compliance, and that's the key of a lot of the features we're providing to our customers. We're making it so the compliance people and the audit people can create a situation where anybody accelerating the business does so in a way that is also secure and compliant. They can audit against that. So the third thing we have done for our customers here is we've created some enablers. First one is an extensive GXP Cloud FAQ on our website. The second one is the considerations for using AWS products in GXP systems. Now this is a really key white paper that we've created, and part of it is we're changing a little bit of how systems are validated, or we actually started with a proposal, like we think that validating systems in the cloud looks like this. We talked about the code being deployed, we talk about how that code is validated, and the fact that the auditor interaction with AWS is zero because the customer controls all these elements of the deployment and operation. We took that document and we hired a group of ex-FDA auditors, ex-FDA regulators. There's a consulting firm called Lockman Group in the US, and the entire staff is ex-FDA regulating or auditors, examiners. And we partnered with a major GXP customer. They're not yet public, but they will be in the next month or two about this. But we had this firm do an audit of a GXP system on AWS, and they confirmed the approach that we describe in this white paper. So if you're interested in this, it actually does simplify greatly and explain a lot of, interprets the old way of doing things into how to do it in the cloud and in a GXP program. So I highly recommend you looking at that, as it has been validated by this external firm and a customer of ours. And then we have a document that's not available to everybody, but it is for NDA, for those under NDA, we will gladly share it. It's the AWS Quality Management System overview. It's our quality manual, and that's the document that we use to get our ISO 9001 cert, or it's a overview document of that, so you can understand how quality is interpreted in the cloud, and as us as a provider, and how you can then also describe your quality assurance processes when using a cloud provider like AWS. And then we do have other extensive resources on our website, and then the ability to connect with my team in compliance. Akihiro-san is on my team, and we regularly help our customers understand this, figure out how to plan appropriately, get stakeholder buy-in, and deploy GXP systems in AWS.
Okay, thank you very much. So we talked about cost optimization things, but it's not only the profit for customer to use cloud service. You talked about security by design, and we have lots of security and compliance feature which could be utilized by customers. In that case, this is the first for me to say in public, but how do you think we're going to provide quality by design concept to customer? Means the customer can build a validated with quality system by using a CloudFormation template, lots of security features and compliance audit features, so customer can create complete those kind of environment on AWS. And as you mentioned, we have quality manuals, so how we maintain quality system within AWS. So those AWS resource combination, AWS resource plus customers operation would produce a good qualified system, I think.
Yeah, and that's a good partnership of AWS and customers. You know, we continually innovate on the features we're providing to customers. I think config rules is a great. I didn't do that. Yeah. Config rules is a great product, and mainly for the quality and audit people that are coming in after a customer has already, after your organization has already started using the cloud. So you may be in the situation, they started using it, there's a bunch of groups that have spun up a bunch of development, and maybe it's even production, and you don't really know how things are configured, if you're following any proper rules. And so AWS config rules allows you to say, I would like to check to see, you know, according to these rules, where in the organization we're out of compliance. So for example, you may require encryption on all data at rest. And so you could say in AWS config rules, I'd like to see any instance in this, in the AWS environment where the data is not encrypted at rest. And so that's and then you'd be able to then follow up and understand why not and maybe encrypt that data. So that combined with the, so there's real security capability there, compliance, technical compliance, and then the support with the certifications we have and the manuals that we have is really kind of a comprehensive suite of things that we provide our customers.
Yeah, thank you very much. So もうそろそろですね。
So maybe we have only exceeded our original time, but we are very much interested in this very hot topic. So once again, I'm sorry to reiterate, but the essence of this is in the handout and this brochure. AWS, how we are responding to the customer's need at the same time with AWS partner. How the partners are digesting our information and how they are going to lead that to guarantee the quality assurance. So please read this document, and I hope it will be a good reference for you. Last but not least, is there any words from you? If not, we have exceeded our time, so we will need to conclude.
Last, final one, nothing, it's okay. じゃあ今日は篠さんどうぞ。
はい、一つ
I have a question to Chad. The code-based audit. To do that in Japan, the paper base is still the mainstream. But in the US, is it already code-based, more advanced? Is it accelerating?
I think naturally the process of doing the audit is going to remain the same. You know, an auditor coming in and whatever they're checking security controls, they're checking quality controls, something that complies with the things that they need to do. They're always going to do those processes. Now, how they actually assess the environment, that's going to be different. And we are seeing, so for example, if you, like my prior example of seeing if data is encrypted across the board. So if you were to do that in an environment that is not AWS, think of the process you would have to do that. You would have to go make sure you have a full inventory of that data. You would have to then somehow assess whether or not it's encrypted either by direct access and looking at the data, or looking at whatever tools you have and seeing what is applied and what keys are applied to what. The process would take a lot longer. Now, if you go into AWS and do the same thing, it's a single API call, and you can see across the board in 1 second where the instances of things that are not encrypted. So what we're actually seeing is people that have to do both, which most companies are in the situation where they need to do both. They need to assess on-premise and they need to assess in the cloud, but the same criteria, the same objectives. And what they're finding is that it's much easier to do in AWS with the tools we provide. And I do have certain customers that are saying, they're moving more to the cloud because of the transparency and the assurance that they can get over the controls in that environment. So they're actively pushing more to the cloud because it's just easier to do the audit and much more transparent to do it when it's in AWS. So we're seeing more of that pushing of that kind of data. And we're also seeing a lot of auditors come in and say, I can see a lot of automated controls. I can get full population sampling of what's in the cloud, and so I need to spend all my time. Auditors saying I need to spend more of my time in on-prem because the assurance there is a lot lower. So we are seeing a lot. It's just the fact is that it is easier in the cloud, and we've been trying to educate the community about this, but the proof is there in the audit when they come to do the audit, and you're comparing both on-prem and in the cloud. It is much more transparent in the cloud.
Okay, thank you very much. So 今の回答でよろしかったです。
Okay, does that answer your question? Sorry, we went over time quite a bit, so we would like to adjourn. But once again, on AWS webpage, you have a lot of information, and there is a PDF materials available of this version. So thank you very much once again. That's it for this session.
エランさん、そしてパネリストの皆様、ありがとうございました。今一度盛大な拍手でお送りください。